appreciate at the time that Syd could have used what he learned to his own benefit. For example, he could have been a world-famous guru. You know, he could have had an enormous following. He could have done seminars all over the country and had gigantic crowds because people are looking for answers and people are seeking to see people who are smarter than they are and get their ideas. But he absolutely would not do that because it wasn't what was best for the world. The last thing the world needed was more gurus. What the world needed was more people seeing that the health that they had, seeing that they were their own geniuses, seeing that they were their own therapists. So at one point when we were living on Salt Spring for a summer, Syd had a foundation, and every month people would send in money, and he would live off that money. And every month the number was growing. And Linda and I were having dinner with him at the Crest restaurant in Salt Spring. And we were talking to him, and he was kind of distracted. And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, what were you saying?" I said, "I'm sorry, what were you saying?" And then he said, "Can we do this tomorrow? I'm distracted, I've got something on my mind, I'm sorry." And we said, "Yeah." And he left. And I heard that at the other table, people were talking about Syd Banks as if he was some type of a guru, and Syd said this and Syd said that. Well, 2 days later, there was a letter that went out. It said, "The foundation is closed. Don't send any more dues. There's no more talks on the island. You people go out and get a life. And after you get a life, we'll talk again." And I was absolutely shocked and impressed at that. The integrity that showed was amazing. And it's not like he thought of it for 2 weeks. He drafted the letter while we were completing our dinner, and he sent it out. And the other thing about Syd personally that a lot of people didn't realize is there were virtually no bounds to his generosity. You know, we bought him as a birthday present this beautiful coat, which was actually quite expensive, from Nordstrom's. And we really picked it out. And is he going to like this? And what color would he like? And I think we talked to Judy about it and got some advice and this and that. We got this coat. We gave it to him. And he was just thrilled. And he was thrilled at the sentiment of us doing it. So he goes, we go out together. We go to this big party out in the park. And then he comes back. He doesn't have his coat. So I said, "Syd, did you forget your coat?" He said, "No, I gave it to someone." So there was a person there who was like a street person, and they were really cold. So I gave him my coat. I said, "You mean you gave him a coat that we gave you as a gift?" He says, "Oh yeah." He says, "George, you can consider it a gift to me that I could give him that coat." And I thought, my God, what level of generosity is that? And the thing about Syd professionally that I didn't appreciate at the time is that he held the line that the principles were a new paradigm. They weren't a better mousetrap. They weren't an advancement in the field. They were a completely new foundation for understanding the human experience. And if that foundation was soil, there would be different plants growing out of that soil. And those plants would be very different than the plants that grew out of the old soil. And it was at the time, he got a lot of resistance from everybody, including myself, that he was too purist, that if he was more flexible about it, the message would get out to more people. But Syd could see so clearly that if you don't show the world this new paradigm, they're not going to find their way, beat a way to your door. That it's not going to become a new foundation for the human race. And I know that's a strong statement, but that's what Syd Banks saw. And he was constantly telling us that, and we didn't understand it very well. And now that he's gone, it's easier to understand because you can see how people are picking it up as a better mousetrap or an improvement, or you can use it here and then you can use this somewhere else. But what Syd said is, look, if people can see that thought is all that's happening, and that it's brought to life, and it's brought to life so well that it looks like it's coming from out there, and that's the human dilemma. If people can see that, everybody would be accountable for their experience, and there wouldn't be conflict, there wouldn't be wars, and the feelings that people had would be so powerful that they would be naturally very generous and very motivated to give back, and it would be a whole new society. And all the problems of the world would disappear in a short time because the foundation would be there. And people would look back 100 years from now and say, what were they thinking back then? That there was war, conflict, divorce, acrimony, unhappiness, pharmaceutical drugs for depression. What were they thinking back then? And he saw that in the 1970s. And he did not get discouraged. I did occasionally, now and again. But overall, he was as hopeful about that happening, is that right, Judy? At his death, than he was 30 years ago, even though it hadn't reached the mainstream. He just saw that this is the future of the world, is to wake up to what's actually happening in our heads. Now, I think it's astounding that someone could be consistently hopeful for 35 years in the face of how slow things have happened. And if you compare that with the average bear who's impatient because their marriage has been troubled for 2 years and are ready to lose hope, and this guy goes 30 years with consistent hope, of 40 actually, that's really, to me, a tribute to the human potential. So there's ways in which Syd Banks was something we had never, just as his human qualities, is something we had never seen before. And I would like to, stand up here today and say that that's been the best thing that ever happened to me, was when I met him. It was like a before and an after. And that's why it's such a nuisance that all of us get up here and talk about Syd Banks this and Syd Banks that. But I think that if you've had someone in your life or something that's happened that's made it a whole new ballgame, it's hard not to take it personally and feel personally grateful to that person.